Hi everyone and welcome to another episode. I'm Ombarus and this week I decided to try to see what my 2D sprites would look like if I modeled them in 3D. So without any experience using 3D modeling software or anything like that, I decided to download Blender, watch a whole bunch of videos on how to model using Blender, and after a bit of practice,
S to scale, E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude, E to extrude, S to scale, E to extrude.
this is kind of what I got for my first model. Not bad. From there, of course, I wanted to see what it would look like with the proper texture. The problem is that texture for a 3D model is not simply a sprite that you put on top of everything. That's not how 3D model Unwrap works for UVs. Nevertheless, Blender has the option to automatically unwrap a model using a simple projection, so I just projected my sprite texture on top of my 3D model, and it actually looks okay if you look at it from the same angle. Of course, the idea of making my model 3D was so that I could look at it from any viewpoint, and if you start doing that, then you start seeing glaring issues. At first, I thought the only solution would be to completely redo the whole texture with a properly unwrapped set of UVs. But then a question popped in my head. Would it be possible to use the half okay-ish projection as a starting point for the properly unwrapped mesh? The problem is that if I have two sets of UVs, each triangle of my mesh will map to a different places inside the texture. So I need two texture, one with the projection and the color information of my sprite, and one blank texture that I use with the properly unwrapped UVs. And maybe there's a way for me to take each triangle's color information from the first texture and copy it into the second texture, and then save it on the disk and just fix a couple of the issues that popped up, like the bottom of the ship or the sides. Now, I searched online for a way to do this in Blender, and the best solution I could find was people telling me I should use texture baking. And I know about this method. It's a way of rendering a very high resolution scene with all the shadows and everything onto a texture and then applying this texture to a low poly mesh to make it look high resolution. And I tried as best as I could to follow a bunch of tutorial online on how to do texture baking in Blender, but I must be really stupid or doing something wrong because the best I could get is something like this. And that's not exactly what I had in mind. So I figured it can't be that hard to do it. I mean, I have a pretty good idea in my head of how to do it. I just need to write it down. And I could have tried doing some kind of Blender scripting. I'm sure there's something like that in Blender, but I didn't want to start learning a whole new system. So I figured maybe I can do it in Godot because I'm already familiar with the JIT script and the rendering pipeline. So maybe I can do something. So I exported my model into Godot, and since Godot already supports more than one UV sets, I exported both UVs, the projected one and the properly unwrapped one, well, as properly as I could make it at least. Now in Godot, the first step was creating a script that would get all the information I needed and start looping over every triangle in my mesh. And to do this is pretty easy actually, because there's some easy method to get every surface inside a mesh. And in my case, I only have one surface. And then from the surface, there's a method to get all the information for each vertices in an array. And all you have to do is loop over in this array 3 at a time to get every triangle and then process each triangle 1 at a time. Now for each triangle, I can extract the UVs of each of the points of my triangle, and I know that it's simply a linear interpolation between each of those points inside the triangle. I know that the first set of UVs is the projected UV that maps onto my sprite texture, and the second set of UVs is where I want the actual color information to go into my new properly unwrapped texture. The problem is that for the same triangle in my model, the mapping inside the two textures is completely different. The triangle doesn't have to be in the same position or the same scale or the same rotation or anything like that. And so it's kind of difficult to figure out how to map each pixel inside my second texture onto the first texture to extract the color information. But I knew that there must be a matrix transformation I could apply to each of my UVs inside my second texture that would convert it into the UVs of the first texture, knowing exactly the 3 points of each of the triangles. And thank God for Stack Overflow for telling me this is called an affine transformation and showing me the math to actually pull it off, because I don't know if I would have been able to figure all of this on my own. Now, the initial results were, let's say, inconclusive. But after fixing a couple of issues and printing a bunch of values for each triangles and trying to compare the values with the expected results and figuring out a few of the errors and typos I had in my code, I finally got it working and I got the result I expected. Of course, it takes a little bit of time to do the computation, but after it's done, I just save it on the disk and then I can open it in Krita, for example, fix a bunch of mistakes and all the wrong triangle information, keep the data that looks alright, and then I can just re-import this into Blender, delete the old UVs and switch to the new UVs, and voila! I have a much better looking ship now. Of course, this was mostly just a proof of concept. I wasn't too careful on how I implemented it. It's pretty ugly code. It was done quickly. It's definitely not very efficient. And it also has a few artifacts that I'm not sure where they're coming from. It could be because I forgot a less than or equal somewhere, or it could just be float precision, and maybe I should try to iterate with smaller increment to make sure I don't miss any pixel. But all in all, I kind of like the result. And if I spent more time like making an actual appropriate model, and to all the modelers out here, I'm so sorry for what my Unwrap looks like. I know it's pretty ugly. I just wanted something done quick, and that's the result I got. I mean, I think for a first try, it wasn't so bad. I don't know. You let me know in the comments below. And somehow I feel this is something that maybe other people might need at some point. It's really nice to be able to convert from one set of UVs to another set of UVs. So I'm probably going to link below a small project in Godot that you can use to just do this. As long as you have a model with both sets of UVs and you link the model in the script, it should be able to convert pretty much anything you have. But also, if you know of a way I could have done it, if you know of a software that does it, or maybe there's a shortcut in Blender that I'm not aware of that would have done that for me, do let me know in the comment, because that would be great if I could just have done this for no reason. But either way, it was pretty fun experiment, so I don't mind having done it. And that's gonna be it for this week. So if you liked what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you all in the next episode. Bye!